So I'm going to talk today, guys, obviously about how to scale your agency team and profitability. A little bit about me, just so that you have some reference. Obviously, my name is Chris Martinez. I am the CEO and founder of Dude, and we help digital agencies to increase their profitability by 30% or more in 12 months. And we guarantee that. We guarantee those results, or we give you your money back. So, of course, everybody always asks, well, like, how can you make that type of guarantee? And the way that we're able to do that is we've developed a four-step process that we call the Dude Way. And essentially what we do is we help you first build out your dream fulfillment team. Then we help you unstick your processes and make everything more efficient. And then we help you to develop the leadership skills, both you and the CEO and all the rest of your leadership team, so that you're able to make really, really good decisions. And then finally, we help you map out your budgets, your margins, all your goals. And we essentially help you fill out this thing called a pro forma, which is your financial roadmap for the agency. And then when you follow that, we guarantee that you'll be able to scale very quickly and very, very profitably. And what I like to say is that scaling becomes science. So it's something that I have it didn't really come naturally to me, but I learned how to scale a business. I've scaled Dude. Everything that I teach today are things that we have been implementing or have implemented in the past to help us grow our own business, as well as things that we coach our agencies on and help them with specifically. So I know all of this stuff works. None of the things that I teach today are sexy. They're not easy, but they are absolutely worth it. And the types of clients that we work with, they've been around for a while. They've seen the smoke and mirrors, and, they've built a solid business, and they're ready to get their hands dirty and really figure out how to help their business reach its potential. So with that being said, I just out of curiosity, put in the chat, let me know the year that you guys started your agency, just so that I can have some reference and I can understand. So 1983, wow. I love that. 1993. Yeah. There's got to be a prize for the person.
I wasn't even on the internet at that time.
Yeah. 2013, 2020, 2010, 2019, last November, 2003. So it looks like we've got a lot of veterans, and then we've also got some newbies. So for the veterans, this next slide is going to resonate a lot more with you guys, but essentially we have entered into what I call the next evolution for running a digital agency. What we are experiencing today in terms of how to run an agency and actually make money is very different than what we were experiencing. And I'm going to say the kind of like the point where everything shifted was March 2020. Now, everybody can remember what happened in March 2020. That's when, at least in the United States, that's when COVID changed the world forever. It's never going to be the same as it was prior to COVID. I hate to break it to you. But prior to that, prior to March 2020, you could essentially run an agency and be fantastic at knowing the technology. So maybe you were an expert at running ads, or you knew an ad platform super, super well. Maybe you were an expert at design and development, or you knew how to build websites really well. Maybe you were great at writing copy. You could be really, really good at the technical side of the business, but you could be bad at knowing how to run the company, and you could still make money. And there's a lot of factors that contributed to that. But for the most part, you could be a bad business person, but a great technologist, and still make great money and have a quote unquote successful agency. That's gone. That has changed. So now that one of the biggest differences is that you have to know how to run the business successfully. You have to know how to run the business like a true CEO. And on top of that, you have to know how to attract, hire, and retain amazing people, all within the budgets. And you have to be able to do that, and of course, implement the technology and get your clients results if you want to succeed. You cannot get by kind of being an accidental entrepreneur anymore. Maybe that's how you got into this, but now the landscape has changed, and you have to learn all these other non-sexy things if you truly want to build a successful agency that can scale and is profitable and makes you the kind of money that you deserve. And what we're seeing right now, kind of like with the clients that we work with or the clients that come to us, as well as, I'm in every 7-figure agency group that there is, what we're seeing is that this is truly the Achilles heel for agencies, is that they've, the ones that are struggling, is that they have not adapted fast enough to the new demands of running an agency. And that's what's holding them back. Another massive pain point for agencies right now are labor costs. So labor costs have gone through the roof since COVID. And so here's what we've seen. Here's what happened. So right, March 2020, the world goes into lockdown, quote unquote. And everybody lost clients. We lost clients. We lost like 18% of our revenue, like overnight. Put a 1 in the chat if you had that same experience where it was like this, oh shit moment, March 2020. We were like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Wow. Awesome. So I'm seeing that come through. And like literally like almost everybody that is still standing today had that oh shit moment, March 2020. So I had it myself. And basically my personal case is I had just bought out a partner in February 2020. So we depleted our bank account to start paying off this former partner. So we go into March and we're like, great, I'm 100% owner of this company. We have 30 some odd employees and we have $5,000 in the bank account. And then COVID hits and we lost all this revenue. So we were freaking out, but luckily we had this foundation of how to properly plan for the growth and dips in revenue too. So we created a worst case scenario plan and we proactively made moves so that if the worst case scenario happened in April, that we would still be profitable, or we would still be afloat, I should say. Profitability was like a dream. Well, then what happened after March 2020 is that people started to recognize, I need to listen to David. I need to listen to Wolf, like all these digital agency owners that have been talking about why you need to get your business online. And the rest of the world was ignoring us. They finally recognized, oh shit, I need to do that now. So then agencies that still were alive, because a lot of them died off. A lot of them died off between March and April. We started getting busier, right? And then we just saw an explosion of demand for digital marketing services because everybody had to get their businesses online. They had to figure out how to generate more revenue from lead generation, online, lots of different things that they could implement to try and stay afloat. And so marketing agencies got busier, which was fantastic. Well, what happened then is that we needed more people, and the supply of digital marketing expertise of employees that we needed, it didn't magically explode as well. So the demand for our services went up, but the supply for the labor that we needed to actually implement didn't get bigger. So what did people start to do? These bigger agencies, these bigger enterprise companies too, they started coming in and they started swooping up everybody. And they were paying them 25, 30, 50%, 100% more than what we were paying, plus signing bonuses. Just in the past week, I've talked to 3 agency owners who lost account managers to people that were literally paying double. And the problem was that we agency owners didn't have those margins built in so that we could afford to pay that person more. So here's the scenario, right? You're paying an account manager $60,000. They get an offer for doing the exact same job at another agency that's going to pay them $100,000, $120,000. The person comes to you and they say, Chris, I love working for your company, but I have a family. I can't turn this offer down. I don't even care if you can match it. Can you increase my salary by 30%? If you can take me from 60 to, let's just say 80, I'll stick with you. And, if you can work in some bonuses too, that would be fantastic. But I love working here. But at the same time, I have to look out for my family. It's really, really important, right? Well, the problem is that agency owners didn't have that margin where they could afford to pay that person more money. So then the candidate leaves. Well, here's the second problem. To replace them, you're not going to replace them at 60. The market has already shifted those labor rates up to 80, 90. So you can't even replace that person. So if this continues to go on, it's very difficult for agency owners to be able to backfill those people that are getting swooped away. Of course, the ideal is that you have the margin so that you can pay your people more money if they get taken away by somebody else, or if they get an offer from somebody else. If that happens, you need to have the margin to be able to fill those seats again with somebody who's going to be more than what you're paying now. We have not seen the peak for what the salaries are going to be. We are still anticipating that those salaries are going to continue to go up by another 20%. I want you guys to take that and make a note of that, because this is the state, this is the biggest threat that we have as agency owners. So it's not the technology that is going to set you apart. The talent is really what's going to be able to set you apart. The talent is finding the right talent is more important than the technology. This is what we're looking at. And when I say talent, I'm not just talking about the fulfillment talent that you need to complete your projects. I'm talking about you, the owner. We also have to develop our CEO skills. We have to step into a role where we know how to run a pro forma. We know how to manage our margins. We have these numbers dialed in so that if a consultant came in and said, hey, tell me about the business, you have all these numbers, you know what the business is doing, you know your growth plan. We as owners have to step into that role if we're going to be successful moving forward. The age of the amateur agency CEO is over. And if you're not able to adapt to the new requirements, unfortunately, your agency is going to continue to shrink, and then you're going to be stuck doing all the work because you don't have the margins in place to hire people to help you do the work. And if you don't have the people, then your clients aren't going to get the results that they paid you for, and the agency is going to continue to shrink until you're essentially just a glorified freelancer. And we don't want that. Like, I am so passionate about helping agency owners. I started my own agency in 2012. I did sell it as well in 2020. I know how difficult it is to run the business. So that's the reason why I'm telling you guys these things, is just to give you a very realistic picture of what we are predicting is going to happen to our industry moving forward. So what I want to do now is I want to talk about a simple framework for how to survive and thrive in 2022 and beyond. So take lots of notes. I'm giving you my best stuff here. And of course, if you guys have any questions about this, I'll make sure that we leave time at the end to answer any questions that you have. So put a 1 in the chat if you guys ever worked at a restaurant when you were younger. Put a 1 in the chat.
It's one of the things I
Christian,
didn't do.
John says 1. Yes. David says yes. Awesome.
Nice.
Bonus points if you ever worked at a pizza restaurant too. So when I was a kid, when I was in high school, this is the mid 90s, working at a pizza place was like the main thing that you did, right? You had to work at a pizza restaurant. I did delivery, but I also worked at the counter and did a little bit of everything. My very first W-2, which in the States, that's a job where you're officially hired and you are on payroll and you pay taxes. My very first job was working at Chuck E. Cheese. Now, I don't know if you guys know what that is if you're outside the US, but it's essentially like a fun zone for kids to go, and they have pizza parties and there's video games. And Chuck E. Cheese was actually started by the guy who started Atari. I can't remember his name. It's a fascinating story, by the way. And so I worked at Chuck E. Cheese. My starting pay was $4.85 an hour for 90 days. That was my trial period. And then after that, they bumped me up to $5.15 an hour. I was killing it, right? Like just making so much money. Actually, no, it was horrible. But here's the thing. I learned so much from working at Chuck E. Cheese. And Chuck E. Cheese, first of all, they printed money. So I was the cashier. So people would come and they would place orders with me. And this is before a lot of people used debit cards and credit cards. So a lot of it was cash. You would not believe how much money was flowing through that place, on any given day. It was unreal. So just to put it in perspective. So I worked at a cash register. There was 5 or 6 of us. And we had a box underneath our register that was about the size of a shoebox, and it had a door and there was a little slot in it. It was about this big. And whenever we would have too many 20s or $100 bills in our register, we would drop our cash into that box. And then the managers would come by and they would collect that cash. On a weekend, the managers would have to come by and clear out our cash boxes 3 times an hour because they would get too full with cash. Imagine a shoebox so stuffed with cash that you can't put any more dollar bills in there, and that box getting filled up 3 times an hour times 5. That's how much money they were making at Chuck E. Cheese in the mid to late 90s. Now that sounds great and all, but what the heck does that have to do with you guys? So one of the things that Chuck E. Cheese did unbelievably well is they had great processes. And because they had great processes, they paid their people very, very well. And why aren't we opening Chuck E. Cheese's? I love that. So their manager, the general manager, who I became friends with, he was, I was 17, 18 at the time. He was 27 or something like that. He seemed very old, of course. He was making $70,000 a year plus bonuses managing a pizza restaurant in 1997. The assistant managers were making anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 a year managing a pizza restaurant, right? How did they have the budget to do that? The biggest thing, and this is where it's relevant to us, is that Chuck E. Cheese was amazing at managing their food costs. And I worked at other pizza places too, and they didn't do this, and that's why they weren't making as much money. When I would punch in an order at the Chuck E. Cheese, and our biggest seller was like a combo, it was like 4 sodas, breadsticks, and then like a large supreme pizza. When I would punch in that order and I would charge the client like $36 in 1997, that order would go back to the kitchen, and the cooks had a chart, and it said for a large supreme pizza, you're going to put this much weight of pepperonis, this much weight of bell peppers, this much weight of mushrooms. So the cooks would weigh the food before it went onto the pizza. Mm-hmm. So Chuck E. Cheese knew when they sold the pizza for $30 that they were going to get that pizza made for $5 or $7. And they knew that they were going to hit that margin every single time. And then they could use that money and they could reinvest it, not into employees like me, because high school kids were a dime a dozen, but in the management that was going to make sure that all the systems and processes ran effectively. So my question to you guys is, in our business running an agency, what is our food costs? What are our pepperonis, mushrooms, bell peppers? What are our food costs? Just pop it into the chat. Anybody, if you have an answer. We've got to have some brave souls out there. Oh man, did I stump everybody? So when you're building out team, very good. Software, very good. Freelancer expenses, labor. Yes, that's the answer that I'm looking for. Fulfillment costs. Yes. Our food costs are labor. Our typically software is included too, but typically our biggest expenses on a project that, like if we're building out a project for a client, our biggest expenses are labor. Now, what goes into labor is time. So actually, if you look more granularly, our biggest expense is time. If we can manage time then we can manage profit. We can predict profit. And so this is the number one thing that agencies are making mistakes on that's causing them not to be as profitable as they can, is that they're not controlling their labor costs. So a lot of us, and I thought this too when I started my agency, we think that, hey, if we sell a project for $1,000 and we're able to get it done through an outsourcing partner or whatever for 500, perfect, I'm pocketing $500. Wrong. So first of all, you should be shooting for a 30% cost of goods sold. And just to clarify, cost of goods sold for us is the labor, the fulfillment labor that goes into building out these websites, landing pages, ad campaigns, copy, right? You want to shoot for 30%. So that means that if you sell a project for $10,000, you have $3,000 to be able to get that project done. That's the goal. If you have hourly employees, obviously you got to track their hours. But even if you have people on salary, look at their hourly rate, and you need to track that time. You need to make sure that you're getting as close as humanly possible to that 30%. There's going to be software included in that. So the person who said software, that's also included in that. But the overwhelming expense on your projects is going to be labor. So you have to track their hours, and you have to look at how much it's actually costing you to get those projects completed. Now, why 30%? Some of you are asking why 30%? I just answered that question. Why 30%? So two reasons. One is if you have a 30% cost of goods and you have a 70% gross margin, it's very difficult to not be profitable and to not be able to reinvest in your growth with that kind of gross margin. At a 70% gross margin, it is really hard not to make good money. The second reason is that if you are going to have some projects that go over, right? You're going to have some projects that you take on, and it's just going to take a little bit more resources than what you anticipated. At 30%, we can still go over by 20%, and we should be able to still make money on that. Jeremy says, who needs to raise their prices? Yes.
Yeah,
I
that's
just took away one of my
right?
bullet points.
Oh, man, sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So hopefully all of you guys are kind of getting towards that anyways. So the first step is, like, if you've never done this before, the first step is we got to analyze what's actually going on. Again, because we can't operate as that accidental agency owner, CEO anymore. We can't be the amateur. We got to be a professional. So we got to start tracking it and figure out what's really going down. How much are we actually spending? And there's actually a second part of that that's really important, because your team members will always say that they're working as hard as they possibly can. You say, I have this other project coming on. We want to take it on. Can you take it on? The instinct of your team members is to be like, no, we don't have the capacity. You need to go out and you need to hire people. Okay, that's cool that you feel like that, but we need to look at the hours that are actually being allocated towards these projects. And then we use that data to determine whether or not what they're saying is accurate. In general, because somebody asked this question before, in general, you can get anywhere from 85 to 93% of your utilization of your employees towards production labor. After about 93% of their time, the quality will typically drop off. So I'm going to use super simple math, okay? So let's say that you have, let's say you have 100 hours in a week of labor time. You can typically push your staff 85 to 93 of those hours can be allocated towards production labor. And any week, you're going to have other things, meetings, whatever. But if they're a designer, for example, and they're working on a project, you can push them to about 85 to 93% of their total working hours towards production labor. If you track their time and you recognize that it's below 85%, well, then guess what? There's capacity for them to do more projects. Does anyone here only work with overseas freelancers for the actual development work? What needs to be done for a project? I'll answer that question in a second. Okay, so with that being said, that's why you need to track your time. So let's talk about let's talk about the 4 types of team members that you have, because if you're in your mind, you're thinking about ways that you can reduce your cost of goods. Raising prices obviously is one. But let's talk about the 4 types of team members, right? And I want you guys all to classify your production labor team members by these 4 categories. The first one is you have client-facing problem solvers. So these are the people that interact with your clients. And these are the folks that if they are presented with a problem, they will go and they will solve that problem without even telling you about it. You just come back the next week and they've basically created a new process. They've solved the client's problem and they have, like alleviated this massive pain point for your clients, and you didn't have to give them any instructions. Those are A players right there. That's the number one. You want to classify those people in your company. The second type of person are client-facing non-problem solvers. So these are the people that are great at just following instructions, but if you need them to think outside the box, you need them to be proactive, that's just not their skill set. It's beyond their mental capacity. Okay, so that's the second type of person. The third type of employee that you have is a non-client facing problem solver. So this is somebody who is not interacting with your clients directly, but they're behind the scenes and they're also solving problems. They're creating processes. They're inventing new things in the agency that's going to help things move more smoothly. Okay, so that's number 3. The fourth type of person is a non-client facing, non-problem solver. So this is somebody who never interacts with the client. They're literally at their computer just banging out projects all day long. Okay. So once you go and you identify the team members that you have right now, we're going to next talk about who are the ones that we can then potentially move to an overseas team or an outsourcing partner or something like that. Okay. The number ones, your number ones, the client facing, the ones that are problem solving, those are the ones that you want to hang on to. Those are your Michael Jordans and your Kobe's, rest in peace. Those are your Zidanes. Those are the ones that are somewhat irreplaceable. Yes, I was limited. Sorry, Chris. I was limited to 5 slides. I usually have a bunch of slides. Yeah. So like, I'm more than happy to give you guys my notes later. I'll give you my email at the end so I can email this out. So the number ones, those client facing, those are the ones that we want to have budget available to, so that if they get an offer from somebody else, or if we proactively want to make sure that they stay with us, that we're able to give them more budget, right? We're able to budget a salary increase, I should say. Okay. The number 2s, those are the ones that you got to make a really hard decision on. Is that somebody that I can find in another country and possibly pay less? Those are kind of like a 50-50. It can go either way. So like they are interacting with clients, so they do have to have good communication skills. If you're in the United States and Canada or an English speaking country, they have to be amazing at speaking English or whatever native country you're in. So that's a hard one to decide, and it's kind of got to take it on a case by case basis. The third one, internal, also problem solving. Those are also A players. You could potentially move that to an in-house or to an overseas team member. But I would look at keeping those number 3s, the number 1s and the number 3s. Those are the last ones that you typically want to move overseas. And then number 4s, those are ones that you could definitely move overseas. If you need to reduce your budget, if you need to reduce your cost of goods, those non-problem solvings, non-client facings, those are the ones that are usually the easiest to find in remote teams, in overseas teams. And you're essentially, what you're doing is by reducing that labor cost of the number 2s and the number 4s, especially the number 4s, you're freeing up budget that you can then reinvest back into your number 1s and your number 3s. Does that make sense to everybody? Essentially, we're reducing part of our team salaries to reinvest to keep the superstars. Do I think that this cover applies to white labelers? Absolutely. Like, we are kind of in that white label. So we use the same principles that I'm talking about. All right. So just to give you guys a summary, I started out my own agency. We had a team in the Philippines. I love the people in the Philippines. The problem with that for me was a time change. I could not deal with the time change. I worked from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. for the first 2 years of my agency. I was completely broke, so I had to do it. I had no other options. But after that, when the company started to pick up steam, I didn't want to work those types of hours anymore. And while the Philippines team was great, the challenges that we had was that I would send them something, it would come back in the morning, it wouldn't be right. I have to wait till they wake up. And then, the client was pissed off, and I just couldn't have that anymore. So that's when I personally moved my operations to Tijuana, Mexico, which is on this other side of San Diego. It's still kind of like an untapped resource for agency talent. And that was fantastic for me. And I was able to take my agency from 50 clients to over 220 clients with a team of anywhere from 5 to 7 people. So no matter where you go to build your team, whether that be Mexico or South America or the Philippines, there's one thing that I require, and I encourage all of you guys to have the same requirement, is they have to work your time zone. This idea of people working while you sleep is a lie. It does not work. Game time is between 8 to 5 normal business hours. So I'm in the United States. My game time is 8 to 5. I need everybody on that time zone. I don't care where you live, but we have to be able to communicate in real time, because my clients have problems right now. And a lot of the times we need to start solving those problems right now. I can't say to my client, oh, you're having an issue with that site being down. Can you wait 5 hours? No. Like, you wouldn't like anybody to tell you that. Why would we say that to our customers? We can't do that anymore. The landscape is too competitive. We have to provide an amazing experience. And part of that is having team members that can solve problems right now. So that's the first tip. Second one is the interview processes. Far too many of us are very lenient in our interview process. Our interview process needs to be very, very complex. Essentially, what you are doing is you're weeding out people and proving that they're not good enough to work for you. I'm going to say that again. Your interview process is designed to prove that somebody is not good enough. So we have a 7-step interview process that we use. It starts very quickly. It goes with the job the job post, which has a little test in it. We have a questionnaire where they have to fill it out correctly and quickly. If they don't, they're disqualified. Then it goes to a phone interview. If they're a weirdo on the phone interview, we don't hire them. Or if they're just rude or they have a bad vibe. Then it goes to 2 technical tests. Then it goes to a psychometric exam. Then it goes to a group interview. And then everybody on that group interview has to agree that this is somebody they want on their team. And it's somebody that they would one day be okay working for if that person were to advance in the company. Everybody has to agree. It takes us about 42 candidates to hire one amazing person. I don't know many other agencies that have that same standard, but this is part of the reason why your team members are not working out, is that we don't have a high enough standard of hiring for those types of people. Hey, what's up, Pat? And so that's the next thing, is you got to be very, very strict on the hiring process. Do not let somebody through that doesn't fulfill or just absolutely blow you away with their qualifications. And the other thing is the reason why most people don't pass our test is not necessarily that they don't have the technical ability, it's the soft skills. And one of the things that we actively screen for is somebody that is willing to do whatever it takes and sacrifice themselves for the good of the team. That one quality is really, really hard to find, especially in technical people. And I'm stereotyping, I apologize, but that's just what we found. So that's the one thing that we look for. And if they don't have that, they aren't going to work for us. That's part of our own company culture. Your company culture might be a little bit different. Okay. The next thing that's very helpful if you're working with an overseas team is it's very helpful to have somebody on the ground in that country that understands the cultural differences. So I'll give you my 2 biggest mistakes that I made when I started to hire people in Mexico. So in the United States, when you hire somebody and you're going to pay them a salary of say $50,000 a year, that individual says, okay, after taxes, I'm going to make this much, right? So we are essentially hiring them and we give them the gross salary. I didn't know that in Mexico. In Mexico, they think weekly and they think net. The employer pays all the taxes for the employee. So when I was hiring my first people in Mexico, our accountant that we used asked me, is this net or is this gross? And I said, it's gross. Of course, that's the way that everybody does it. I had a mutiny on my hands. Everybody was so furious when they got their first paychecks, and it really hurt my credibility with the team. So that was mistake number one. Had I had somebody to tell me otherwise, I wouldn't have made that mistake. Second mistake that I made is we ran monthly meetings. Now we do them quarterly because the team's too big. But we ran monthly meetings just to kind of catch everybody up with what happened and where we're going with the company. The meeting was running, or lunch was running very late, and I was running out of time. So I decided to have a working lunch. The lunch hour in Mexico is sacred. You do not work during lunch. Now, I can see benefits of that. You know, in the United States, we typically will always work through lunch, or a lot of people will go to the gym and then eat their lunch at their desk. That is not a thing in Mexico. So when I did that, I happened to coincide the working lunch with the time where I report the numbers and how the company is doing. Well, they interpreted that as Chris is trying to pull a fast one on us. He's trying to screw us, and that also left a bad taste in the mouth of my employees. Had I known that, had I had somebody to give me advice, I would have just said, yes, eat your lunch, we'll reconvene. I ended up having to do that meeting over again and issue an apology. But those are some things that, like, there's little cultural differences that it helps a lot if you have somebody on the ground who can actually guide you and help you avoid those challenges. And then the last part about building a team overseas is look in hidden places. Everybody looks to the Philippines. Everybody looks to India. Nobody was looking in Mexico. That's why I was able to find amazing people there. We're also expanding more in South America, you know, and I guarantee you there's other hidden pockets of talent that people aren't looking at, and they're overlooking. And those areas are fantastic for finding great team members. So don't always just follow the herd and go to where everybody else says to go. Try and find other hidden pockets of talent. I kind of consider myself an underdog. So I always say, like, go and find those other underdogs that are out there. Okay, moving on. Another framework, and we're going to talk about numbers here, is net income. So this is your net profit. After you've paid yourself, after you've paid everybody else, after you've paid all of your expenses, your rent, I want you guys to shoot for 30%. 30% net income. Why is that? One, it's a sign that you have a healthy business, and it'll give you a lot more options for reinvesting into growth. Okay. Two is, if you guys ever want to have an exit, this is very, very important. The difference in valuation between an agency that has 10 to 20% net income, or 10 to 15, is not, you know, let's say 15% and 30%. You're not going to get a 2X. You're going to get like a 5X. It's very different. Like, you might get a 2X if you have 15% net income, but you'll get, you know, 10 to 15 if you have 30%. So it's very, very important that you work on that net income, because one day you might want to have an exit. And the worst time to sell an agency is when you need to sell that agency. So let's build that margin in now. The fifth one, you got to raise prices. Everybody's got to raise their prices. We already talked about that. If you're looking at this and you're thinking of, like, what are the other things that I can do? Raise your rates. This is like another problem, that we charge too little. Raise your rates. Think about it this way. Imagine if you had to pay everybody on your team 20 to 30% more. What do you need your rates to be? And now some of you might be thinking, like, I can't do that. My market doesn't allow for that. You got to figure out how to sell that outcome better. You got to figure out how to sell the value better. So what I tell everybody is sell the outcome and the team. This is something that not enough people are talking about. Is they're not talking about the implementation team that you have that's going to get all this stuff done. It's great to create the strategy, but you have the team that's actually going to get the work done. And you can use the higher salaries to your advantage. You could say, guys, like, if you want to go out and you want to build this digital marketing team for yourselves, and you have $450,000 to invest in that team, go out and do it. I'll just give you the strategy and you guys can do it. And maybe you pay me a consulting fee now and then. But most of the time, they don't want to do that. So you can say, I give you the easy button. Instead of you having to pay the $450K in salaries, you can use my team, and it's a flat rate of $10K a month. And we're going to get all this stuff done. And I guarantee that you're going to get results. What sounds better? And of course, they're going to choose you. So you got to retool the way that you're selling if you don't feel like you can raise your prices. Sell the value, sell the team, sell the outcome. Your clients just care about the results. They don't give a shit about the platform. They don't give a shit about where you're running the ads or the copy. They just want results. All right, 6-1, and then we'll get to some questions. Is you got to be more human. We have gotten to a place where we've been so good at automating that we've lost the humanity in our services. So we created this philosophy called Bridge, Connect, and Deliver. And essentially what it means is Bridge means you have open lines of communication where we can talk in real time, anytime. Well, I should say during normal business hours. That's absolutely paramount to your clients having a good experience. They have to be able to communicate with you guys. Many lines of communication. Second part is what we call Connect, and that's essentially where we're building trust and we're becoming an extension of our agency. So we adapt to their processes, and because of the communication, we're able to learn very quickly how they operate and become an extension of them. And the third part is Deliver. This is the easiest one. You got to get results. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. You have to. There's no exception. If you do all three of those things and you bring the humanity back into your agency, then you will not lose clients ever. But if you do 2 out of the 3, eventually they're going to cancel. I have data on this. We studied this. We went through so many different cancellation scenarios with our past clients. If you Bridge, Connect, and Deliver, you will not lose clients ever, and you will grow your profitability. And the 7th one that I wrote down, which is just a reinforcement of Deliver, is you got to get your clients results. And I'm going to wrap up with this one, is that we got to make agencies ethical again. Our reputation, our industry reputation is in the toilet. Because the barrier to entry was so low for so many years, a lot of scam artists came in and legitimately ripped people off. They didn't know what they were doing. They looked the same to our clients, and people paid the money. And then these people didn't get results and they disappeared. Well, now they think that everybody who's a digital marketer or who runs an agency is a scumbag. Literally, that's what they think about us. We have a collective obligation to make our industry ethical again. We have to get great clients and get great clients results. There's no substitute of that. It's everybody's responsibility. And on top of that, when you build a very profitable agency that can get results, you are also going to be rewarded financially. It's essentially getting back to the fundamentals of helping our clients and then our clients rewarding us financially. So that's it for me. Let's get to some of these questions. I know we only have about 10 minutes left. So just fire away. If any of you guys want to help me out by asking me the questions, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So for the next part, you could stop sharing your screen. Yeah, fantastic. Chris, good stuff. Lots of really good stuff. It resonates a lot. I'm going to ask a few of the questions that's been asked prior to the meeting or prior to the webinar. So if you have one after having listened to Chris, please type it into the chat. And in the meantime, I'm just going to ask you a few of the questions that we had, if you're cool with that.
Sure. Yes, of course.
Cool. Okay, so one question from Ralph about hiring. What's your most important hire and why?
I love that question. For most of you, it's going to be a project manager to basically help with fulfillment. Most agency owners that get started, they're very good at doing the work, but eventually they get so much business that they can't do it all. And they need to invest most of their time on running sales. If you do not have consistent sales and ideally sales growth, then it's really hard to scale the business, because you have months where, we typically see these peaks and valleys in sales. Like you sell a bunch and then you're stuck in fulfillment. And then the pipeline is dry. Then you got to sell a bunch and then you're stuck in fulfillment and the pipeline is dry. It's hard to keep people, right? When you have those dips, when you have those peaks and valleys in your sales, because you're essentially paying people to just sit there and twiddle their thumbs, because in the dull months, in the months that you're prospecting. So usually a great project manager will help you solve those problems. They'll help you bring on the talent and keep everything organized so you can focus on sales.
Nice. Xabizo, I hope I'm saying it right. He's touching a bit on what you were saying. When you start out, when starting out, sorry, where can you find the best talent? So you hinted a little bit of some location, but when you're starting out,
depends on where you're located.
That's
and
right.
like I say, like do not compromise on the time zone thing. I know some people think that it can be done. I don't. I've been in this business for a decade. I've not seen the time zone thing work out long term well. There's going to be balls that get dropped. I mean, think about it. There's balls that get dropped when you have people in the same time zone. It just leads to a bad customer experience. So I would look at where you're going. Like I found Mexico. We help our clients get access to talent in Mexico and South America. But you know, like if you look at your time zone, most of us, for some reason, like when we look for talent, we look to the left and we look to the right. Look up and down. Look up and down. Look, what are the countries that are in your, I don't know, is this latitude? Or is it, yeah, latitude, longitude? I don't know. But look at the countries that are in your same time zone and look to see if there's people there. And if there's people already there, great, you know, and maybe you can find some hidden pockets as well. It's kind of just trial and error. I know my industry, we only work with agencies in the US and Canada. So I know in my time zones where we can find the talent. It's a good question.
No, I absolutely love it. Yeah, it has its challenges. We also have, you know, people on different time zone equipment, and it does create some challenges. Simple, like organizational meetings, like when you actually want to, you have to make sure that it works for every time zone. This is very difficult. I love it.
Well, you know, we're having our quarterly kickoff meeting on Saturday, and everybody has to be there. It's mandatory. And, you know, so if we had a bunch of people in different time zones, it would be a huge inconvenience for a lot of folks. And we still do have a couple people in Asia, but they are committed to the team and they know, you know, I got to be working these hours. And luckily they love working for us. So they make that sacrifice.
Yep. So you would basically say it's okay to hire in different time zone, but they have to commit to your time zone. That's
they have to commit to your time zone. They have to commit to your time zone. At least 6 hours a day. Anything less than 6 hours, typically it's not going to work.
Love it. Nick is asking, when is the right time to hire an account manager or hire account managers?
Account managers are one of the most sought after employees right now. And people have a lot of different definitions of account managers. So I've seen account managers that are essentially like another salesperson that are just trying to upsell the clients. I've seen account managers that are more like customer experience representatives, where they're just trying to keep the clients happy. And then I think the most common is where you have kind of like a hybrid, where they're like a digital marketing strategist, they're like a project manager, and they're also kind of like a salesperson. That's kind of the role. First, you got to identify what it is they're going to do. I think that once you hit 30 clients, that's when you have to look at the type of account manager that you want to bring in. I would probably steer more towards the customer experience manager, actually, to make sure that you're maintaining a good relationship and keeping the retention, than an account manager. Once you get to like 50, 60 clients, then it's definitely worth looking into an actual account manager that manages the relationship. But just to be clear, we don't have any account managers right now. We only have customer experience directors, and then we have project managers as well. So the project managers manage that technical relationship with the client. The customer experience managers are making sure that the clients are happy, that we're hitting timelines, that everything's going well. Also staying in touch with the clients. And, you know, if their client's growing like crazy and they need a lot more staff, then they'll shoot it over to sales, and then we'll have that sales conversation. But we don't have an account manager. If you're looking specifically for account managers right now, it's unbelievably competitive. So I would also, you know, rethink it, and maybe you can create 2 positions that are going to be easier to fill and might be a little less costly for you.
Love it. Makes sense. Zana, she's asking, when starting, should you hire the first and, oh, sorry. When starting, should you hire first and find projects after, or get a project first and then the talent? Like what order? Like typical.
This is a very good question. It's a very challenging question. What I say is you have to have all your sales projections and your budgets listed down on paper. So we do this thing called a pro forma. It's essentially this fancy spreadsheet where you can plug in your sales goals, what you're going to charge on average. And then it gives you the labor budgets that you have to work with, and your net income as well. So we help our clients fill this out, but essentially what you do is you've put in all your projections for the year. And that way, if you bring on a team member, you know how that team member is going to pan out from an ROI standpoint the next few months going forward. The problem that I see is that people hire folks and they don't know how much they're going to sell after they make that hire, and then they get underwater, right? So as long as you have the plan in place that if I hire Jeremy today and I pay
you
him
can't afford me, I'm sorry,
X
Chris.
amount of money. Yeah. So Jeremy's insanely expensive. But what is that going to do for me? What does that enable me to do on the sales side? So if you have that lined out, if you have that mapped out, then I have no problem with you going out and hiring that person before you've actually, got the business. As long as the business is in the pipeline, if you haven't secured it yet, I'm okay with you making that hire. But if you don't have the plan, I think it's a bad idea.
I think we all got burned by that, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've been burned too.
All right.
Actually, I have a little. I want to mention this really quickly.
Please.
So this is a conversation that we have internally. So we look at all the prospects that we have in our pipeline, and then on our weekly leadership call, I report that to the rest of my leadership team. And so I say we're probably going to bring in this many clients this week. And then the operations team says, great, we have capacity for those people. If they say we only have capacity for 1 or 2 of those people, and you're forecasting that we're going to bring in another 4 clients, then they talk to the HR team, and the HR team starts recruiting. They turn on recruiting. And ideally, we start this 30 days prior. So we have our whole sales targets mapped out for the whole year. And then every week we're talking about the pipeline, because the pipeline essentially sets in motion operations, which then sets in motion HR. So I don't know if anybody else is doing it like that, but that's worked out really, really well for us.
I like the logic of it. So you basically have a monthly cadence, and you can find talent within 30 days all the time.
Start to finish, it takes about 2 weeks to get a candidate in, and then it takes about 2 more weeks before they're producing. So we have a very thorough training process. So basically, right, from first touch to able to start doing deliverables, it's about a month.
And you're super efficient. I wish this was the case for me. It takes more time.
It's hard. It's really, really hard. Luckily, I have great team members, and my brain is kind of wired for efficiency anyways. So it's one of my.
I thought my one was too, but hearing you, I'm saying okay, I'm starting to doubt now.
I know. I always I screw up the curve. What other questions?
Right, we'll take you out as an outlier, and so
yeah, I am definitely the outlier in many ways.
All right, question from Jimmy. My team of freelancers for my web design studio is from the Netherlands. Would you recommend to hire on project basis or hourly? And what kind of price should I think for them per hour?
I just released an email about this, I think last week. I do not like hiring contractors one-off for projects. I do not think it's the right environment for success for you as the agency owner or for the client. Because typically what happens is if it's a one-time project, that person has other clients that they're trying to service at the same time. And when they take on your project, they'll say, okay, they're going to pay me $1,000 and it's going to take me 20 hours. And if that project takes longer than 20 hours, then that individual, that contractor, puts your project to the bottom of the list. And that's when you start having delays. So I really like having full-time people as opposed to contractors. Sometimes you have to do it, but just take into consideration that there's a very good chance that those projects are going to have delays because the contractor is working for somebody else.
Brilliant. Hold on. Damn, I lost the question. I should just pay attention to just what Christian is telling me. I'm sorry about that. BD is asking, we are looking for sales business dev person. what does a compensation package looks like? Oh, that's a good one. In our industry, first time
great.
we are doing it in 30 years, 39 years even.
This is another thing, you know, like I'm
Good
not
question.
a great sales manager. I was been told that I'm a good leader. I'm not a good manager. So I ran a sales team for a year and they didn't work out. And that's my fault. You know, one is I didn't hire the right person. Two is, you know, like I didn't manage them properly. So I don't really have the definitive answer on that. Reach out to my friend Joey Gilkey. You can just Google him, JoeyGilkey. That's what he does. That's his expertise. But typically a good salesperson, like a closer, you know, you're looking at 80 to 100,000 base plus commission. Sales salaries have also gone through the roof. I think that's one area where we're paying them and it's not worth it. But you're looking at a very high base salary with a solid commission. Like good salespeople, they want to make 250,000 minimum. So it's a challenge. What I would recommend is hiring people who are essentially like sales account reps or sales. What's the word I'm looking for? Not a full-blown salesperson, but somebody who can facilitate the sales process and kind of help you. And then you just go in and close the deals.
SDR, is that what you're thinking of?
SDR is more like a cold caller to me.
Yeah, could be.
It's a sales associate. Oh God, the word is like on the tip of my tongue. It'll come back to me. But that's
Start with sales. Yeah.
Landy also offered a question about how this applies to white labelers. You still have the same principles. You still have the same margins, right? You're still trying to hit the same gross margin, the same cost of goods. I don't know how you run your white label. Like we do a flat rate. It's really important that you have the hours reporting with that. You have to have the hours reports. You have to be able to calculate if you're charging a client X amount, you have to be able to calculate to the penny how much it costs you to serve those clients. And then, you know, the ones that you aren't making the right margin, you have to figure out a way to upsell them more services that are going to help improve that margin, or sometimes you have to drop those clients.
You're only purely looking at hours, Chris. Like what if you have like a member on your team that is performing like twice as fast, you know, and then you need to then replace them. Like if you just look at hours, you're going to get it wrong, right? Or it comes back to the pepperoni things and the mushroom things, and then you actually know.
So in Mexico, there's very strict labor laws, so they can only work 48 hours a week. We actually have them work 40. So we typically don't push people that hard. You are going to have a rock star, you know, that is going to work that hard, but those are also the people that are going to get recruited away very fast. So I would look at moving them to a role or giving them salary, you know, that they deserve based on that. Mm-hmm. That's going to be very unusual. And then depending on the country that you're in, you know, you usually only have a certain amount of hours that you can have them work, or you're going to have to pay a lot of overtime. So I don't think that challenge is going to come up very frequently.
Yeah, I was more thinking in productivity. Like if you give 1 hour to one guy, then he's going to do twice as much as another hours to someone else.
So what we do with that actually is we took our hours reports and we looked at our superstars. Right. And then we use that as benchmarks for different levels of developer, for example. So we say a junior developer is producing at this level. So when we do our reviews with our employees, we say, okay, great. You were at a junior level when you came in and you're still performing at a junior level. Here's what you need to do to get to a mid-level or a senior level, right? So we use that data in a different way to set benchmarks for where our team members need to be.
Yep, love it. It's a great answer. All right, final questions, personal one from Hubert. How do you manage stress? Do you even experience stress?
I love that question. So everybody has their own way of doing it. Personally, I've always leaned into exercise. I love working out. I love lifting weights. I tore my tricep about 6 weeks ago, so I haven't been able to do as much lifting. I also do jiu-jitsu and I play soccer. The tricep was a jiu-jitsu injury, kind of like a freak injury. But that's the one thing that I've always leaned into was being like physical, like actually exercising. But I will say that the biggest growth that I've had personally has come from meditation and journaling. So I started doing meditation a few years ago, and it just absolutely transformed me. And I do a daily journal. I just do the 5-minute journal, gratitude journal. That helps a lot. And then I go to therapy, so I'm a huge advocate of mental health therapy. I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for my therapist that I originally saw back in LA when I was living in LA. And so, I think there's mainly guys left on this call. Yeah. So guys are kind of, depending, every culture is different, but guys are typically socialized to not talk about our emotions, right? Be a man, shove that shit down, just deal with it, suck it up. Chris. It's very, very toxic and poisonous to us, especially as an agency owner. There's tons of stress. There's tons of ups and downs. So therapist to me, it just, Anopa's here. Okay. So she's better equipped to manage these emotions in general. But going to talk to a professional, what they do is typically just give you the tools that you can use to manage, the craziness of being an entrepreneur. That's the way that I approach it. They're essentially giving you a tool to add to your tool belt. And the beauty is that when you learn these tools or these skills to manage emotions, the next time that stress comes up, it's not going to hit you as hard. It's not going to knock you down for as long. You'll be able to bounce back very quickly. So if that's outside of your comfort zone, I highly recommend that you look at those things as well: the therapy, the meditation, and the journaling. Yeah, actually, I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you have any questions.
But people watching the webinar won't be able to get your emails. Okay. And are you sure you want to?
Chris@dudeagency.io. Actually, I have it on a slide. If you're going to put it on the recording.
Yeah.
Just show it on the slide. Chris@dudeagency.io.
There you go.
If you're interested in working with us or figuring out, seeing how we can help you, just go to dudeagency.io. We do have, some requirements. For example, you have to be at least 300K in revenue. You have to be, have an existing team. And even at 300K, we're typically looking at $500,000 and above. But yeah, there are some requirements. If you're interested in working with us, just go to the website. You can schedule an appointment. But if you have a question about anything, just email me at chris@dudeagency.io. I am what I call irrationally passionate about helping agency owners because it's so freaking hard. Like, it's one of the hardest businesses, in my opinion, that you could run. And far too many agency owners are not making what they deserve, and the businesses are not valuable. Like, they're not worth anything. And that's a punch in the gut. When I had a client recently who, doing 1.2 million in revenue, private equity came in and offered him 750K for the business. While 750K is good money, when you build a business that's doing 1.2 million in revenue, you would think that it would be worth more. And so, that's one of the things that we're helping him out with, is to help that valuation get the numbers where they need to be, and also increase his salary too. So, but yeah, if you have any questions, just reach out to me. I'm an open book.
Yeah. I really love your last comment. A lot of people are actually running agency as just like one job they have, and then obviously you can't sell your job.
Yeah. To someone else. Think about it this way. It's like, how much would it cost for somebody to come in and replace you? Like, how much would you need to pay for somebody to do your job? Most people would be like, to run my agency, I don't know, 200K. And they're making how much? They're making 80. They're making 80. Like, why are you settling? Why do you think that you're not worth the 200K that you would pay somebody else? And the beauty is, it's not that hard to change it. We need to make a few tweaks every month for a year. We move the needle 2 degrees, a percentage point here, 2 percentage points here. We move the needle a little bit every month. And by the end of the year, your life looks completely different. I'm living proof of that.
Yeah, this is spot on. Do you know about Profit First, by the way?
Yeah, I love that book. Yeah. We implement the principles. We don't actually do the separate bank accounts and things like that. But I love that book. I'm a huge fan of, why am I forgetting his name?
It's okay. I don't know in detail.
Michalowicz. Mike Michalowicz.
Oh, that's the one. Yes.
I'm a huge fan of Mike Michalowicz.